Hello, my name is Shifra Lowen. I'm also known by my legal name, Clara Wasserstein. So I'm going to share a little bit of my story. To share my whole story would take much too long. I can write several books about it. There's a quote that says, "Don't be afraid to tell your story because it may be the key to someone else's prison." And that's my goal with this story. So I was raised in a small village outside of Montreal. It's called Kiryas Tash. It's a very strict Hasidic community. And from a very young age, we were taught countless rules of how we were supposed to behave every second of the day. And we were also taught about punishment that God will send if we don't obey, if we transgress on any of those myriad of rules. So I used to be very afraid. Like, for instance, they taught us that on Shabbos you're not supposed to brush your hair. So in the Sefer Halacha that they taught us in school, it said that if you tear out even one hair from your scalp, you will die young. So I was taught that in second grade. So I was petrified every time when I thought that maybe I had torn out a hair on Shabbos. I didn't brush my hair on Shabbos, but like if it was late when I got ready for Shabbos and maybe it was already time after sundown and I didn't notice, whatever the case may be, it was so scary to me that I will end up dying young because of that. And that's just the tip of the iceberg. That's just one little example. Every calamity, every tzara, every problem that happened, whether it was in the community or somewhere in the other end of the world, was our fault because we weren't pious enough. That's why God is sending us a warning to do tshuva, to repent. And when I got married, I thought that this is the life that I'm going to continue to live and raise my kids to live. And my husband started talking to me about how we can make our children's lives easier and how we can give them a good childhood. So of course, I always hoped that I could give my kids a good childhood, but when he started making suggestions that we should not hit our children, it was such a wild idea to me and such a scary thing to take on, because I was raised that this is the only way to ensure that your children are God-fearing Jews. If you don't hit them, then they grow up to be wild animals. So it was really something that I had to come to terms with. Like, my husband was extremely patient with me, and he showed me in the Holy Svarim that many famous tzaddikim, gedolim, that said that it's really important that you give your child the best first years of their life, because this is the foundation of who they become. And if you give them pleasure, you really spoil them. That's the actual words that they use. You should really give them such a great time, and this is going to ensure that they grow up good people. So of course that convinced me. But there were a lot of things that he suggested. Everything was within the law of the community, but it wasn't the mainstream, how do you call it? Like, it wasn't acceptable to do that. It was just according to the books that they prescribed to, or the rabbis, it was allowed to make those changes. However, we were taught in school that you're not supposed to change not even a hair from what your parents and your teachers have taught you, because it's a slippery slope. And if you start changing even a tiny thing, it's going to end up dragging you down. You're not going to be able to stop yourself from sliding straight into the abyss, and your soul will be lost forever. So that was really a dreadful thing to, like, that scared me terribly. But as I said, when he showed me the references and he convinced me how this is the right thing to do, I was confident enough to do them. At some point in the community, there was starting to be some noise about my husband doing things differently. And he became a threat because if somebody in a community goes against the norm, so to speak, then they open a door, they open a window for people to think differently and to become independent, and that's a threat to the control of those who are in power. So they started persecuting him, and it was a very long story. I'm not going to go into all the details, but we ended up leaving that little village and we moved to Montreal. And when we came to Montreal, I was like breathing a sigh of relief. I was like, okay, finally I can start living my life. Hopefully I found a community where they're friendly and they're nice, and hopefully the cheder for my son will be better than it was in Kiryas Tosh, because we were not happy with what they were teaching over there. It was mostly focusing on rituals, like all kinds of crazy stuff that they put into his head. Like he was 3 years old, and his Rebbe would tell him that he's not supposed to sleep on his stomach or his back. He has to sleep on his side. And my husband would ask the Rebbe, like, why would he tell that to a 3-year-old? And the Rebbe said, it's never too early to start teaching your child how to be holy, like, because they were afraid that he's going to touch his genitals or whatever. I don't know, like, it was so disappointing, the things that they focused on in Cheder, and I was hoping that in Montreal they will focus on raising him to be a good person, like with good middos, with good virtues, like not so much focus on technicalities. And in the beginning it was really wonderful. It was summer, so my son had day camp. He didn't have that in Tosh, and it was exciting. But then the year started after Sukkot, and his Rebbe was a slapper. He slapped the kids. And at first, my son didn't complain much, but when Purim came, the kids were really excited about the upcoming holiday, and the Rebbe started slapping right and left, and my son came home traumatized, and he was like, the Rebbe slapped me. And I was like so shocked, because I had kept close contact with the Rebbe constantly, like to make sure that he knows that we appreciate what he does, and we want him to really treat our child well. That's what I was taught, that when you have contact with the teachers, then they know that they are appreciated and they put in the extra effort to take care of your child properly. And I called up the Rebbe and I tried to make it diplomatic, and I said, like, I don't understand. You keep on telling me that my son is a tzaddik. He's the best kid in class. Why did you slap him? And he says, no, tell your son not to be worried. It's just I hardly touched him. Like, don't worry. It's just because the kids were so rowdy. I had to set an example. And I was really disappointed, but I thought, like, I hope he got the message. And I had made a big mistake, because no, he not only didn't get the message, he just couldn't help himself. Like, he didn't stop slapping the kids until my son had enough. And he finally ran away from Cheder. And that didn't happen overnight, because at first I was so lost. I didn't know what to do. I tried to promise him presents to go back to Cheder. I tried to speak to the principal. I tried everything I could, because I had just moved to a new city. I was like alone. I had no resources, nobody to ask for like guidance. Like, how can I find a different school? I didn't even know where to look. I didn't have anything beyond what I knew from this little village that I came from. And when my son came home from Cheder and he had ran away, I was like, getting a really almost like a boost. It was that last straw that to give me the courage. Like he had the courage to run away and to stick up for himself. That gave me the courage to say enough is enough, and no matter what, I'm going to have to figure this out. I'm not sending him back. So the cheder, obviously they tried to get him back, and I kept him home. We went to the library, we picked up books. I tried to teach him English, reading, history, geography, math, and spelling. We played Boggle to learn spelling, and I did the best that I could, obviously, but I was hoping to find a better institution for him to where he can just be a child, where he can just be taught the basic education that he deserves. And to make a long story short, we were accepted in a Litvish cheder. We had a meeting with a principal, and he was very impressed with our son, and he said for sure he would love to register our child. He's going to get back to us, but he never did. And then we found out the truth that the rabbis contacted him. He should not accept our family. And he told it to us because I had no clue that my phones were tapped. I did not know that the Askanim and the community leaders and the family back in Tosh were all working against us, and they were always one step ahead of the game because they knew what we were doing through tapping our phone. And I was crying to the principal. I was begging him, like, this is such a gift for my child to have a place where he can actually be a child and learn. Like, I was listening in one of the classes, the way they were talking about the Haftarah Re'echa K'macho, and I was like so excited that my child should have a class like that where he can learn things other than all those stupid things that he was taught in Tosh. And they told me, no, they can't accept him. The rabbis, like, they don't want to get in trouble. They can't do it. And I really thought that my whole world is falling apart. It felt like all my dreams have led me to this, and now this is it just flew out the window. It's just out of reach, and it's not possible for me to actually have this education for my child that I so wished he could have. So there was a very traumatic period where the Askanim made a claim against us to Child Protective Services, and police broke down our door. It was a very long story. I'm not going to get into it. Just to point out that when that happened, I was done. I was like so done with anything, with wanting to have anything to do with this community. I was like ready to leave no matter the price. And I was going to do whatever I can to find the school that my child could blossom in, no matter if it is approved by my parents, by my community. I don't care anymore. Until then, I was still trying, like in the Haredi community, the Litvish cheder and all that. But once this happened, I was like, I don't want my kids to grow up in a place like that, where there's such violence, where there's such horrible methods, how they treat people, how they betray people. Like, it's so, it was like devastating. And in the end, I was really lucky. I found a wonderful Jewish day school. And the happiest day of my life was that day when we arrived, first day of school with my 3 kids. And I was finally able to see in reality that they were able to go to a school and have a normal education and to have music, gym, like everything that a child deserves, and just to be able to be a child, to blossom the way they deserve. So that really taught me to never give up hope, because when things look so dark and so hopeless it really feels like it's the end. Like there's nothing to look forward to. But right behind that wall, we cannot see what the future will bring, but there are a lot of things that can happen after the greatest darkness. Like I say, the sun comes up right after the darkest part of the night. So hopefully this story can inspire you and help you believe that you too have a better future and you too can make your dreams come true. And what I learned is a very vital and important part in making your dreams come true and having the respite and the happy ending that you're looking for is to not be afraid to ask for help. My husband was so courageous. He kept on asking for help. I was introverted, so I was like so afraid to tell anybody anything about my life. And I learned how much we benefit from sharing our story, from obviously not to anybody out there that doesn't deserve to hear our story. As Brene Brown says, you have to really find the people you can trust. But at the same time, even if you share it to a random stranger, if it feels right for you, you never know just from one share what can happen. Like all kinds of resources that we got and all kinds of unbelievable and unexpected help just because we shared, just because we asked for help. So I hope this helps someone. Thank you for listening.